Hey, what's up, everyone? Right, is everyone ready to take a trip through the ages? So I've got some retro vegan content lined up for you today. This is going to be very interesting for a lot of people, especially younger people, because I guess we tend to think of veganism as quite a new thing in most of our lives. But alas, it has existed throughout the ages. So we're going to go through some footage, some of the earliest bits of vegan footage I can find. Let's start. I've got quite a few videos lined up, but we'll start with one from the 1970s. So this is a BBC documentary. It was from a series on BBC called OpenDoor. Let's watch along with that, and we will live react to it as we go.
At first glance, this may look like an ordinary family having an ordinary meal. But take a closer look. The main dish is made from nuts, whole cereals, and soya, which combined are just as high in protein as meat and considerably cheaper. The vegetables are cooked in vegetable oil, cholesterol-free. And the apple dessert is served with cream made from plants too. This meal is accompanied by good helpings of salad and raw fruit.
None of that looks too appetizing.
The Vegan Society was formed in 1944 by a group of vegetarians who realized that there was more cruelty involved in milk production than in meat production. This realization shocked them into pioneering a way of life that is of the utmost importance in feeding the hungry millions today and our children tomorrow. Milk production is cruel because calves are taken from their mothers soon after birth and sent to the slaughterhouse or veal calf units so that humans can have the milk. Cows often cry for their babies for days, and after repeated pregnancies, worn-out cows are butchered as soon as their milk yield drops. Many people are turning to veganism today because so many more could be fed if we ate plant foods direct instead of feeding them through animals first, thus
It's frustrating, isn't it, that these arguments that we have existed throughout the ages. They're not any kind of new thing, but yet they haven't been taken on yet by the masses. We're obviously doing a lot better than we were, but it's kind of sad that we were saying this since the 1970s and people just haven't been listening.
Increasing the chance of world famine and needless scenes like these. The number of animals deliberately bred by man now outnumbers him. This adds up to a second population explosion, which we must stop if we are going to feed people. But can we keep healthy without any animal products? Can we bear and bring up our children healthily and happily? Can we grow crops properly? Can we eat well? This is Jack Sanderson, vegan for over 30 years, Deputy President of the Vegan Society, and Secretary of the Research Section of the Vegetarian Society.
This guy has been vegan since the 1940s. So even back in the 70s, you had vegans who who'd just been happily living on a vegan diet for 30 years, and people are still denying that you can be healthy as a vegan. When literally in the 70s, there was people who had been vegan since the 40s and even further back.
He is going to take us to meet some people who will answer these questions.
This is Dr. Ellis, a consultant hematologist at Kingston Hospital. I understand, Doctor, there have been a number of clinical investigations into the health of vegans.
Yes, this is so. During the past 15 years, we have investigated hundreds of vegans and done hundreds of tests on them. But it's not possible to mention all now. To mention a few, firstly, we've done clinical examinations on them, X-rays, electrocardiograms, weighed dietary surveys. We've investigated pregnancy in vegan women. We've looked at infants from the age of 1 year to 20 years. We've done weighed dietary surveys of the intake of diet of vegans, also their physical efficiency, and many other investigations.
Could you tell us the result of your investigation?
Very few, yes. Firstly, vegans tend to be lighter than meat eaters, and they also have lower blood cholesterols. This would mitigate against heart disease, as opposed to omnivores who tend to be overweight and have higher blood cholesterols.
That's a bit different now, because usually now when people talk about veganism being unhealthy and vegans being unhealthy, yeah, that excuse still exists, but they mean unhealthy in the wrong way. More of us are overweight than underweight. So when carnists now are like, vegans are, generally vegans are really unhealthy, you're all skinny and wasting away, it's like, no, it's the opposite. A lot of us we've got so much good vegan junk food now that you don't really see underweight vegans these days. I'm sure they exist, but no more than underweight non-vegans. Now when vegans have a health problem, it's just like the rest of non-vegan society. We're overweight, we're tackling obesity and stuff because we're eating all this awesome vegan junk that's out in the shops.
The vegan physical efficiency is normal. They're normal, healthy people. Their disease pattern is the same as omnivores.
Would you like to make any conclusions as a result of your investigations?
Yes, certainly. The vegan diet is quite adequate, providing that it is fortified with vitamin B12. And many foods appearing on the market now are fortified with vitamin B12, so this is no longer a problem. They are normal, healthy, happy people whom you couldn't distinguish from omnivores, except that they are slimmer and perhaps smile more.
Look how positively that doctor in the 70s talks about veganism. And he's not even a vegan himself, I'd assume. He hasn't mentioned anywhere that he's vegan, and he probably wasn't. That, I think, is because of the comparative lack of big beef, big dairy propaganda that our society is now just saturated with. In fact, maybe it was the 70s when veganism first just got some kind of exposure with documentaries like this, that these industries got a bit scared and thought, shit, we better ramp up our propaganda campaigns. And that's why now, if you see doctors and stuff talking about veganism in documentaries and these nutrition quacks you see who have massive platforms on social media, it's just riddled with anti-vegan nonsense, the kind of stuff that we've been used to dealing with for such a long time.
This is Tom Sanders, a research nutritionist at Kingston Hospital.
What decade is this guy from?
Are you convinced that the vegan diet is fully adequate?
Yes, I believe it is, provided a mixed diet is eaten, one comprising cereals, nuts, pulses, fruit, and vegetables, and it is supplemented with vitamin B12. Dietary inadequacy can arise if too high a proportion of cereals, refined cereals, are eaten, such as polished rice. Otherwise, it's quite adequate.
Do most nutritionists agree with you?
Yes, I think in the main they do. The trouble is there aren't many nutritionists. Most of the work in nutrition has been done on animals, and we know more about the laboratory rat than we do about man, which is a great shame. Vegans are a very interesting group of people to study because their diet is very similar to most people in the world, people living in the third world countries of Asia and Africa, who eat very little animal products. And if we look at the disease patterns in these developing countries, they have very little heart disease, very little cancer of the colon.
Dude, this guy's coming up with truth bombs.
Western countries such as North America and this country, we have a lot of heart disease and cancer of the colon. And we've looked at see if the incidence of these diseases is less in vegans. And we've looked for various risk factors associated with these diseases. And we found that vegans are probably less prone to get heart disease and cancer of the colon than meat eaters.
How about animal fats being necessary for brain development?
This is not true. A theory was put forward based on experiments with carnivorous cats, and they'd made the mistake, which a lot of research people do, of applying animal experiments directly to man. Well, we've looked to see whether these animal fats are necessary in vegans, and we've measured various things in the blood, and we found that vegans can synthesize these special fats from plant fats. And evidence for this is also supplied by the development of vegans, people who've been vegans for life.
These myths have been going on since the 70s and they still haven't stopped. The idea that he just said just then that the idea that we need animal fats for brain development, which is something carnists still tell us to this day, especially about women breastfeeding kids and all this kind of stuff. And he's saying back in the 70s, he knows back then that this is misinformation that comes from studies on cats who are carnivores who actually need to eat animals for brain development. So it's just wild how this absolute crap has not stopped since the 70s and probably before.
Mental development is quite normal. Their educational attainment is generally quite high.
What would you say was the relevance of veganism to the world food problem?
I think it's very important when you consider developing countries are suffering from overpopulation and food shortage. In these countries, foreign agencies, FAO and the US, AID, and other such groups are encouraging these countries to increase livestock production. Now, in countries where the grain situation is critical, feeding grain to animals, which are very inefficient converters of food, it takes 10 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of meat, is the same as snatching grain from the people's mouths.
This is Serena Coles, one of our vice presidents. She's been a member almost from the beginning of the society, and she's a medical social worker. Tell us something of your experience.
Well, I became a vegetarian in 1943 during the difficult days of the war. And in those days, we knew nothing about B12 or many of the other things that we now have. Soon afterwards, I realized that I wanted to become a vegan because I suddenly knew that so much cruelty was involved with dairy produce.
And I believe you also brought up a son as a vegan.
Yes, my son was born in 1945, and I maintain, rightly or wrongly, that this was partly because I had improved so much in my own health that I was able to conceive.
So that was the medical point of view.
You know, that is awesome that you had people back then who turned vegan and they didn't have social media in those days. The message just resonated with them. They heard somehow about the horrors that cows go through in the dairy industry and what happens to, male chicks, I'm sure, in the egg industry. And they just got it and they just changed. It's sad that I can't say the same for myself. It's sad that it took social media, to change me back in 2013. But, that's awesome to see these people and being showcased back then.
Also, nutritionists at the Queen Elizabeth College, University of London, are just about to publish a very favourable report on the health of vegan children. Now let's see what vegan families think. By the way, pulses mean P's and B's.
I'm a life vegetarian. The family disliked slaughter for food, which is why we were vegetarian. And when we realised the cruelty involved in producing meat and eggs, we decided to become vegan as well. Philip had been vegetarian for most of his life and decided to become vegan when we met.
Yes, for many years I tried to carry the courage of my convictions to veganism, but I was anxious about anemia and lack of vitamin B12, but I needn't have worried about that. One day I was vegetarian, the next I was vegan, and it didn't bother me a bit. Becoming a vegan is like shedding a very heavy, unwanted overcoat. It's a great relief when you go into a supermarket and you're able to bypass so many food counters. And that relief is extended mentally when you realize that you're no longer involved in battery food production.
It's surprising how many people have said to us, are you going to bring the children up as vegans? And of course we are. We feel it's the best food for us and for them too. There's nothing puritanical about it. We enjoy the vegetables, fruits, nuts, pulses, all the things we eat, and we give them to the children because they're the best things for them.
Can anyone who lived through the 70s and has a clear memory of it in the comments section tell me why people from the 70s speak like this, in this very sort of like they all have this kind of manner of speaking. What's going on with that? There's like a lack of expression in the way people spoke in the 1970s. The voice just stays very kind of monotonous.
There's nothing restrictive about it, and we feel really fit because it's so free mentally and we have a clear conscience about it.
Obviously, we like the children to grow up in our philosophy, but as they do come in contact with the general society, pressure will be put on them to give consideration to a meat diet. But the point is that they'll be able to choose for themselves, and we'll at least have given the experience of living without any animal products whatsoever.
The health clinic where I take the children, very happy with their progress. They're normal, healthy children. I started them off as breastfed babies. I feel breast milk is best for humans, cow's milk is best for calves, and it all went well for us. They take all the food that we have, all the vegetables, fruits, nuts, nut meats, pulses, anything, very happily. And as you can see, they're growing and developing very well.
Many children are adverse from the start to eating meat. They either dislike the texture of it, sometimes the smell, or the taste of it. But we find that with these children, they accept everything gladly and they enjoy all the marvelous different foods that we can produce.
Right, these whining kids are annoying me. Let's fast forward.
10 months old. My name's Harold Bland, and this is my wife Jenny and our baby daughter Rosemary, who is 10 months old. We've been vegan now for 10 years, and of course the baby is a life vegan. We find that our vegan diet keeps us perfectly healthy. We can pursue all our outdoor activities that we used to with just as much interest. We go cycling, camping, canoeing, walking, all those sort of things. And we find that we can carry on our business lives and working lives aided by the vegan diet. And we find we enjoy our lives even more than before because we find we have a clear conscience.
This family looks like, and no disrespect to them, because awesome that they're vegan back in the 60s and the 70s. They're saying they've been vegan for 10 years. They look like how vegans in the 1970s probably mostly looked. There wasn't, I don't think, I think, you know, stereotypes can have some kind of, there can be a certain truth to like stereotypes. And I think the reason people think vegans look a certain way is probably because in the 70s, when veganism was so rare and so niche, vegans probably did have a certain subset, the way their appearance was, the way that they dressed. And I think this family, the Bland family, I think they look like how people imagined vegans to look. Just like people would look at them, this family here, and think, what a bunch of lefties kind of thing. And they probably are. And I think that's kind of why we get this. Now it's not a true stereotype. We're a very diverse looking group of people now. I don't think in the 70s vegans did look like a massively diverse group of people, at least not compared to now.
About things we eat and do.
Now to the table and the kitchen. Don't you find vegan food rather boring, Jenny?
Well, we were very worried about that too when we turned vegan, but we soon found it became very interesting as we found lots of new possibilities to try out. And we also found it became very much cheaper.
Do you spend much time preparing your food?
Well, with a small baby, and I also teach and I do the gardening, I don't get much time. I do bake all our own bread, and I don't use convenience foods, but I still find I don't spend very much time at all preparing it.
Is it very difficult? Do you have to be a very good cook?
No. You can see by looking at the recipe books that we've got that it is really very easy. And there's one called First Hand, First Rate, which really lives up to its name and is biased towards locally grown foods. This one has got a recipe for vegan cheese, which we found all our friends who eat cheese normally, they're very fond of it.
Harold,
70s vegan
you've
cheese.
been looking at the question of comparative yield of different food crops. Do you really think that you can grow enough plant food to feed a vegan population?
Well, yes. The vegan diet is extremely economical in terms of land usage. If we take, for example, the protein yield per acre of
Oh my
wheat
god, this
and
guy is
beef,
so boring.
and
He's so
allow for what we
right.
call the
Like, fair
biological
play to him,
factor,
he's so
we
boring.
found that wheat yields 10 times as much as beef. Milk is a little better, but wheat still yields 3 times as much as this.
He's got to be a teacher.
Now, various
He's got to
foods
be a
give different
geography
comparison
teacher.
figures,
The way he
but,
looks.
and some can be as high as 30 times. Now, with an average of 10 times the food from our fertile areas, Britain could become self-sufficient in food. Now, if we look at the world food production, we found that nearly 50% of the world's grain harvest is fed to animals, which return only about 1/10 to the plate. This means that nearly over 40% of the world's grain is being wasted, and this is in a world where malnutrition is rife.
This is Kathleen Janaway, Secretary of the Vegan Society.
One of the OGs.
Kathleen, some say that
You'll need to look up who this woman is. So this is an important bit of footage. This might actually be the only bit of footage you will ever see of Kathleen Janaway, who was, I think she was either one of the founders of the Vegan Society in the 40s, or she had some very kind of strong tie to it. But she would have been known to Donald Watson and Leslie Cross and all those people. So you're watching right now a legend of our movement who is not well known in this day, but you know she'll be long dead now, long dead. But here she is.
animal manures are necessary for the health of the soil.
I know people say so, but there's no real reason to back their statement, no research. Hundreds of gardens like my own grow excellent crops with no artificials, no animal manure, nothing except vegetable compost made from vegetable wastes. After all, animal manure is only plants passed through animals. I pass plants through my compost bins instead. All the inedible bits of fruits and vegetables go in layers in these bins. I cover them with layers of weeds.
So she's showing you how it's done, guys.
A thin layer of soil and a sprinkling of herbal activator. And in 6 or 12 weeks, you get marvellous compost. That grows excellent crops.
I just looked her up on Google. She was the secretary of the Vegan Society back then. So, yeah. Yeah, quite a legend of the movement. Sorry, I'll carry on.
Last year, we had 200 weight of tomatoes from this garden, lots of beans, giant cucumbers, and many other crops, all grown from vegetable compost. Why use artificial fertilizers?
She was born in 1915. 1915 she was born, and she died in 2003 at the age of 87. It says, leaving behind a legacy of inspirational work and writing in and beyond the vegan movement. Thank you, Kathleen, for your incredible contribution.
That can do damage to the soil's structure and life and cost irreplaceable fossil fuel to make. Why use animal manure when animals need so much land and work to support them, when you can get good crops with just vegetable waste, earthworms, bacteria that live in small bins? And as for doing it on a wider scale of the farm, why should it be more difficult than cutting grass for hay and silage? Anyway, if England turned vegan, we'd need so much less land to produce food. We'd have wide acres for forests and wildlife and recreation. At the moment, 90% of the agricultural land of England goes to support animals. If we are going to feed people, we have just got to stop breeding these pathetic creatures.
The Sahara Desert and many other deserts have been produced by bad farming methods.
Jack Sanderson.
In the time of Christ, the Sahara was mostly covered with flourishing forests. Bad farming, that is, chopping the trees down.
He was a former president of the Vegan Society. This guy.
With herds of cattle, exhausting the soil, and then moving on, has produced this desert condition. By reversing this process...
Now, here's one annoying thing that doesn't seem to have changed as well. The programs about veganism seem to be too focused on land usage, resources, environment kind of stuff. There's not enough focus in this documentary on the rights of animals, which is a shame, because these people in the documentary, you're looking at pioneers here of what we now, of our modern animal rights movement. These two, like Sanders and Janaway. So it's a shame that they didn't get them to talk more about animal rights, and it's too much about, oh, do you think that we'd have enough to feed people and stuff like that? So even then, the BBC were like, no, we don't want to show people what happens in a slaughterhouse.
In our time, by using trees properly, almost any kind of soil can be made to grow good food.
Let's skip this bit.
Bare hillsides carrying precious topsoils into the rivers, causing floods. Rain drips through trees and soaks through fallen leaves to maintain underground waters. And
as a child, led me out of the maze of medical drugs towards health-building foods. Ever since I started a vegan diet, trying this and trying that, my health has steadily improved. My experience of other people's ill health, working as a naturopath and helping people wean themselves off drugs with whole, fresh plant foods, convinces me, and all those that try eating this way, that there's no better way of lasting good health. The health-building qualities of this kind of food lies in the fact that the food elements are readily acceptable to the body, unlike animal foods, which can cause harmful side effects. Anyone who wants to start this way of life, I would recommend a careful approach with the help of literature from the Vegan Society.
Yes, and we'll give you our address later. Harry Bonney, you are an ex-boxer, a parachute jumper, and still at 50-something of an athlete. You are a blood donor, an entertainer, and a supporter of many good causes. Tell us what you think of the vegan way of life.
I've been a vegan for more than 14 years, and I can honestly say I've never felt fitter or more relaxed. I stopped drinking milk when I learned of the cruelty inflicted on cows and their calves. Let's face it, Erica, cow's milk is for calves, not for humans.
Yes, and we have other athletes in our society too, like Jack McClelland, a wrestler, footballer, and cross-channel swimmer. And they all agree that milk is a baby food, not fit for strong men.
We had cross-channel swimmers back then. People who would swim like between England and France. They would swim between those two countries as vegans, and people have been doubting that vegans can be fit and healthy on a vegan diet.
Eva Batt. Eva is chairman of our vegan council. Tell us, Eva, how you became a vegan.
I remember very clearly, Erica, although it was nearly 20 years ago. There was this railway station platform, and there were some cows herded at one end, and they were making a very pathetic noise. And at the other end were baby calves, very, very young, and they too were crying for the money.
Yeah, so if you Google Eva Batt vegan, seems she made a lot of like the early cookbooks and stuff. In fact, is that even, I think in the thumbnail to this video, that might be her cookbook in that. So we might see that in a second.
The cows. And of course I asked an official, why couldn't they be put together? And he explained that the cows were going to market and the calves were going to the butcher. To the butcher, I said. Why? Well, he said, you can't have milk unless cows keep having calves. And you can only rear a few of those cows as cows. Most of those other poor little things will be in veal and ham pies before long. This shook me. I hadn't realised that milk production was responsible for all this suffering and slaughter. I had pictured placid, gentle cows happily grazing in green pastures, and I thought how kind the farmers were to relieve them of their milk. I turned again to the cows, because one was nudging my shoulder, trying to attract my attention. And as I turned, she gazed straight into my eyes, and there was a real message. That's the time it came through to me. I knew then I could never drink milk again. And I hadn't. But believe me, I had a terrible time over that weekend, just wondering how I was going to manage. I knew people could live well without meat, but without milk, I really thought I was going to die. So you can imagine how delighted I was when I discovered that there were other people who were living happy, healthy lives as vegans.
Now, I'm just looking as I look through the vid, there looks to be a bit now on the animal rights stuff. So let's see some footage of some 70s UK farming now.
Ever before.
Obviously, factory farming wasn't as prolific back then. Nonetheless, the cruelty and the exploitation was still inherent. The craft being taken away. Oh, it's always tough to watch.
We don't have to kill the animals and eat them.
Vegan children.
I like it because we like the animals, but we don't like to kill them, so we don't eat the meat.
And the suffering is so unnecessary because not only is vegan food adequate for health, but it can be truly delicious and much cheaper. Now let's see what vegans eat. Well, of course, we eat a lot of vegetables and fruits. We eat nutritious savories instead of meat and fish. We have desserts and cakes of all kinds, made, of course, with vegetable fats. Without.
I apologise, due to the grainy 70s footage, you can't really see what these say. I think that cake in the middle there says peach fruit cake or something like that. Then the bottom left one is a chocolate sponge. Some kind of tart she's pointing out there, she's probably going to say.
Eggs and milk, and this is cheaper too. We have wholemeal bread, and we have a vegan substitute cheese.
There's the vegan cheese. That is the famous 1970s vegan cheese. It's just like a brown block. I'm sure it tasted. I don't even know how it tasted. So I can't. Tell us in the comments. Anyone who tasted vegan cheese in the 70s, let us know how that tasted.
Which is very quick and easy to make. Sliceable, cookable, and very...
Did they have nooch back then? Does anyone in the comments know if they had nooch back in the 1970s? But yeah, those of you who have tried plant-based cheese in the 1970s, let us know what it was like, what it was made of.
Easy to keep. For all these dishes, you will find clear recipes in our cookery book, What's Cooking by Eva Batch. There is a creamy plant milk, and we can have milkshakes.
Beautiful.
We have vegan convenience protein foods, which are obtainable at all good health shops and some other shops too.
Easy.
Once we have got used to the changeover, we really do not miss animal products.
Thank you, Erica. If you would like recipes or more information about other aspects of veganism, the address of the Vegan Society is 47 Highlands Road, Leatherhead, Surrey. The
It's in
Green
Birmingham now, in
Revolution.
the UK.
The Bloodless Revolution. Right.
There we go. That's our first video out the way. So we've just traveled back to the 70s. Where are we going now then, guys? Let's take a look at this one. We've got a 1980s cookery show. So let's take a look at this one. Share screen. Diana Virgo. I don't know who that is.
Hello, I'm Diana Virgo. Welcome to my vegan kitchen. Vegan. Well, lacto-vegetarians.
1982 this was from. This is a clip from 1982, and this is a cookery clip.
Are people who don't eat meat, usually because of the cruelty involved to the animals in their rearing and slaughter. Vegans are aware that there's just as much cruelty involved in the production of milk and
Oil
eggs.
mixed with chalk. Nice.
And
Thank you,
so
Dave.
we exclude
That
all
was 90s
animal
though.
products from our diet, taking our nourishment first-hand from the fruits of the earth, from the plant kingdom. Not only is it possible, it has many positive advantages.
You know, for 1982, the footage is quite clear. That's actually looking quite good.
Ethically, nutritionally, and economically. On a global scale and at the domestic level, it makes very good sense to take our sustenance first-hand rather than second-hand through the very inefficient conversion of plant to animal protein. It takes 10 tons of plant protein to produce 1 ton of animal protein. And on a global scale, that spells disaster. Deserts are being created because of overgrazing. Rainforests are being felled with incalculable repercussions environmentally to provide grazing land for beef cattle, which will end up as beef.
So the rainforest destruction was happening all the way back then. In 1982, she's talking about rainforest. How do we even still have rainforest?
Burgers on the tables of the overfed, while elsewhere people starve. The earth can sustain us all from its own resources if we use them thoughtfully. All that we need, not only to keep us ticking over, but to make us positively bounce, is there in abundance. It just takes us to put it together. Well, let's have a look at some of the ingredients we will be using.
She's got lovely
and their
produce,
nutritional
lovely fresh
advantages.
produce. Look at that.
Fresh fruits and vegetables.
Proper plant-based
obviously.
cooking.
No lack of those.
Not a processed
And
food in sight.
no lack of vitamin C, for example. There's enough. Well, there's the same amount of vitamin C in 1 orange as there is in 3 homegrown black currants. We're not going to go short now. Folic acid, again,
Beautiful.
no problem with the greens. And there are a few hidden goodies too. There's vitamin A in the carrots, or retinol equivalent, and calcium in the celery, and in the cauliflower, quite a substantial amount of in there. And in the parsley, iron there too. In fact, it makes very good nutritional sense to use a green leafy vegetable with your meal, as it helps to release the B complex vitamins from the cereals.
Put them
and
leafy
pulses,
greens in, folks.
so that you get all the benefit of them. Trace elements, as well as minerals, particularly in the homegrown items, of which there are quite a few here. Turnips, radishes, strawberries, blackcurrants, leaf beet, lettuce, parsley, herbs. You can grow quite a lot in even a very small garden, which not only provide tempting morsels, but there's a lot of goodness there. It's worth doing.
She looks very healthy as well. Clear
apart from the
skin.
calcium, there's
She looks
protein
like
here.
she's in good shape and stuff.
These are fresh peas.
A good
and
representative
I'll be
back
eating
then.
these raw. So in fact, the main protein store comes from dried peas and beans, which we'll be going into in a moment. That goes into the compost as part.
There we go. So that is the end of that one. Right. What have I got for us next then, guys? Truth. Right. We got some 90s stuff. Right. 90s kids, you're in for a treat. You're going to love this one. Right. We've got Truth or Dairy, which is a 1994 short documentary featuring the legend himself, who sadly died recently, Benjamin Zephaniah, R.I.P. Benjamin. So this is going to be quite sad in many ways to watch, because he was such a influential and inspirational man in our movement in the 90s. And for those of you not aware of him, he was a very famous poet, performance poet and musician from the UK who was vegan ever since he was about 13 years old or something like that. He just heard that animals get exploited for food, and he just got it. He always just had a strong sense of injustice throughout his life. Let's check this out. Truth or Dairy, 1994. These 90s graphics, man.
Some people say the problem with being vegan is you can't eat a bloody thing.
He was always a football fan as well. Supported Aston Villa, who my mum's side of the family supports. He's from Birmingham.
I mean, by the time you've stopped eating meat, fish, milk, eggs and cheese, there ain't nothing left except a few poxy vegetables. You're obviously a bit of a liability on the eating out front as well. So you have to stay in by yourself, cooking lentils the whole time. Some restaurants might knock up an omelette or something if a stray vegetarian walks in. But they haven't got time to go cooking a load of chickpeas because you think you're a vegan.
He's got his meze there, his tapas. He was such a colourful character, Benjamin. We miss him so dearly. What a guy. So positive in everything he did. I better fast forward that in case that song's copyrighted. I'm trying to avoid copywriting during the stream.
Muesli, soya bean curd, soya sweet treaties, soya's the word, soya bean margarine, soya bean sauce, what can make medicine? Soya, of course, soya makes yogurt, soya.
What he's saying now is his performance poem, Vegan Delight, which is taking the mick out of the question, vegan, what do you eat? and he says like this whole long list of stuff
Ice cream.
that he's picking off
try
the
a
shelves
sorbet,
right now.
Try a round supreme. Try a thick licorice. Try a salad. Try any cider. This cider is bad. Plantain and tabbouleh, crummy pudding, onion bhaji with plenty coming. Breadfruit and coconut, molasses tea, dairy-free omelets, ready chili, gingerbread, nut roast, sorrel for poor. Cocoa or rye bread, I take them on tour. Drinking cool Moby makes me feel sweet.
What was the question now?
What was the question now?
What do we eat? There we go.
As well as not eating animals, vegans don't wear them either. Vegan shoes, as my mum calls them, come in all shapes and sizes, from the hard-wearing to the highly stylish. Now, there are some vegetarians who justify wearing leather by saying it's only a byproduct of the meat industry and that they're not actually contributing to the animal's death.
Nuh-uh.
Come on now. If the meat industry couldn't sell the skins for leather, they'd probably go bust. Killing the animal simply for meat would be unprofitable. And profits is what it's all about. Vegan can now pretend they are wearing leather. Doesn't mean you gotta like this sort of stuff. But I love it. Cow's milk is promoted as a health-giving wonder food. But when you stop and think about it, it's actually a pretty weird idea to drink the baby food from another species. Plenty of animals regularly kill and eat each other, but we are the only animals to take the breast milk from another species, and the only animals to drink milk after infancy. This spinach contains more calcium than this pinter, and 500,000 Brits can't digest cow's milk anyway.
Probably more than that now, due to influx of immigration in the UK, because I think it's only kind of white Northern European people, or very much mostly them, who actually have the gene that can digest lactose or something. Is it that they have lactase or something like that? So I think it just shows you how powerful dairy propaganda is, that I think most like black and brown people worldwide can't properly digest milk or the lactose in milk, whatever. And it's still pushed on them so heavily by propaganda, and always has been.
Instead of cow's milk, vegans drink soya milk, which can be bought at almost all supermarkets and health food stores, and which can be used for cooking in exactly the same way. It contains half the calories and fat, and is only slightly more expensive because taxpayers subsidise cow's milk.
I'm a Northern European mutant.
There is a common misconception that being vegan is some kind of sacrifice that people make because they love animals so much. However, the animal that will benefit most from you becoming vegan is yourself. If you look at any diet plan or health warning, the message is always the same. Eat less meat, dairy products and animal fats, and eat more fresh fruit and vegetables. The author might as well just write, go vegan and save themselves the bother. Got to catch up with Lucy Stevens, my mate, vegan, British triathlon team. Hello, Lucy.
Hi, Benjamin.
So what do you have to do to be in a triathlon then?
Well, I swim 1,500 metres, then cycle 40 kilometres and run 10 kilometres
Lucy
one after
Stevens.
the other.
So this is an athlete from the early 90s who's vegan.
There is.
How long have you been a vegan?
I've been a vegan for about 10 years and a vegetarian for 7 years before that.
So you can be a top class athlete and be a vegan at the same time?
Oh, definitely. I think being a vegan's probably helped me, actually.
This was another really sad thing about Benjamin Zephaniah. He always was so fit, healthy and active. You know, he was only, I think, in his 50s, early 60s, just this year when he died. Or last year, whenever it was. So, he got a brain tumor. It's really sad because he was always promoting the health of a plant-based diet, and he was always taking care of himself, going down the gym and running like every day, and still a brain tumor got him. So, R.I.P. Benjamin.
Because I get all the protein and all the carbohydrates I need, but I don't get any of the saturated fats you get in a vegetarian or a meat diet.
Here's a funny guy.
I used to run for England.
I hadn't even heard of that guy. This guy, the footballer, who was this guy? Look, Neil Robinson, Everton player. I never heard his name mentioned as a vegan. This guy's Jack. Andreas Callen. I wonder if she's related to George Monbiot. So look at all these retro vegan athletes as well that we don't know of generally. You're right, in case.
I'm a poor bloke from Mayfair. I'm unemployed, times are hard, and I'm saving up all my money because I want to be a student when I grow up, he said. And besides, he said, I haven't got the time. This is the 90s. It's do it quick time, grab and run. I can't be soaking beans and pulses for 4 hours a day. It'd be non-stop cooking. There'd be no time for credit card fraud and joyriding and ram raiding and sex. Milk is fab. It's wet, it's creamy, it smells yummy when it's been left in the fridge too long, and it comes in bottles that do cute jiggly dancing in their adverts. Apart from the adverse health effects for humans drinking the stuff, the only problem with this super liquid is that for every 7,000 litres or so that you produce, you get a free calf. Milk is only produced by humans or animals after they have given birth, as it is the food for the newborn baby. The calf must be disposed of quickly before it starts scoffing all our milk. What happens to it depends on its sex, and for once, the girls get arguably the better deal. Males are no good at producing milk, but they are damn good at making meat. A couple of days after being born, most of them will go off to join a beef herd and get fattened up ready to join their mates in the supermarket freezer. An animal-loving nation like ours wouldn't dream of allowing anything as barbaric as veal to be produced in this country. So any British calves wanting to spend 6 months in a cage, not being able to turn around and consuming only liquids, have to be exported for the pleasure. We can't have our calves back until they are tender white flesh.
Now, I think I might have a clip lined up for this stream actually. 1994, I think this was the year Jill Phipps died. If not, it was the year after. I think it was 94 or 95. Now, Jill Phipps was an English animal rights activist who was crushed to death by a live export lorry. So she was protesting the live export of calves for the veal industry. This truck was heading abroad to transport these calves, I think, to the Netherlands, and she was crushed to death. So we obviously had the horrific death of Reagan Russell recently. This was a UK case that happened in 1994 and 1995, and Benjamin Zephaniah now is talking about veal calf export from the UK.
Flesh, ready to be consumed with a delicate tomato and basil sauce, and perhaps a bottle of fine white wine.
Like Reagan Russell, Rebecca,
Females are
who
much
died
luckier than males.
crushed by the lorry
yes.
recently.
Some will
for the Save
admittedly
movement.
go on to become meat like their brothers, but others will join the dairy herd. Although they don't get to have sex, artificial insemination puts them in the family way, and they have a little baby about once a year. This means they'll still be making milk for the last calf and so end up pregnant.
There's some egg industry
But
stuff
to
here
make
as well.
eggs, you've got to make female chickens.
Damn,
And
so
for every female you make, the law of averages says you'll also make a male. Unfortunately, male chicks are unable to perform the one function that can make cash for humans. That is, laying eggs, which means that they are nothing more than a waste of space. And almost 1 million of these surplus chicks are gassed in Britain every week. Buying free-range eggs is undoubtedly a pretty nifty way of alleviating any.
It's crazy that we had all that technology back in the 90s. We had little mini gas chambers for chicks back in 1994, where they just go off a conveyor belt just like that. These machines of death and destruction.
It's like blemishes on otherwise spotless conscience. But are these male chicks really going to care how much leg room their sisters will get? As 80% of all British eggs are produced in battery units, anyone buying ready-made food containing eggs or eating eggs out at restaurants can rest assured of the small but important contribution they are making to upholding these fine institutions.
Wow, comment here from Dave. It was 1995, the death of Jill Phipps, and Dave was at her funeral. That's quite the story, Dave. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I don't know if Dave knew Jill Phipps personally or knew of her through the animal rights movement, but it's great to have a long-term vegan like you watching along, Dave. Thanks for sharing that with us.
It is for these reasons that vegans do not eat eggs. It is estimated that 260 million acres of rainforest have been cleared in America alone to grow crops to feed livestock. That's about 55 square feet for every one of those. The destruction of the rainforest is not just bad news for both human and the animal inhabitants of the forest, but also for every living thing on the planet that needs oxygen to breathe. Each cow produces up to 50. Becoming a vegetarian is a very positive thing to do. But there is a certain amount of hypocrisy in, on one hand, refusing to buy meat and animal fats, but on the other hand, supporting the very same industries by buying milk or eggs or liver. Our power as consumers cannot be underestimated. We effectively dictate exactly what goods are produced. And if the demand for animal products starts to disappear, then the industries will have no choice but to start producing more ethically sound items or go bust. Really, when you think about it, becoming a vegan is the ultimate consumer boycott. There's no doubt that becoming a vegan is not an easy option. You'll be the butt of all those amusing lettuce and rabbit jokes. You'll have to visit health food shops, and your friends and parents will try and slip bits of meat into your food. Not only that, but animals do taste nice, apparently. So, in a perfect world, everyone would be vegan. There'd be no global warming, the ozone layer would have got patched up, and nobody over the age of 30 would be allowed into raves. But so what? We've heard it all before. Nice film, Ben, and all that. But what do you want me to do about it? Let's face it, it's not exactly cool to be a vegan. I mean, would you be a vegan?
Yes.
Heather Small?
Because firstly, I didn't
It
really
is Heather
like
Small.
the thought of eating animals anymore. And secondly, I'm asthmatic, and cutting out dairy products I find just really helped with my health.
At first, they think
I didn't realise Heather Small was vegan, or maybe I did because I think I have watched this clip before. But I don't think it's well known that she is or was. If you don't know Heather Small, very powerful voice she's got. So she has some solo songs, and she was also the singer in M People. They've got some good stuff. If you want to get transported back for some 90s nostalgia, be sure to check out Heather Small or M People.
mad when you say you don't eat meat, but now it's like worldwide that people don't eat meat or dairy products. Definitely, I will always be a vegan.
She sings, "What have you done today to make you feel proud?" Everyone knows that, right?
Hi, I'm Katie Lang, and this is Lulu. Meat stinks, and not just for the animals, but for human health and the environment. I always wanted to stop wearing leather, and you always go, it's so difficult. What about my boots? What about my jacket? And I am now leather-free and very proud of it.
We want to avoid this endless human riot. Why don't we start by changing our diet?
I started becoming aware of animal rights, I guess, when I first became a vegetarian. A friend of mine was a vegetarian, and I asked her, I said, well, why are you a vegetarian? And she just said, well, you know, it's just like if I just ate my friend's dog or something, you know, and it just clicked with me.
Raised rabbits to eat, and you're supposed to kill them when they're 6 weeks old. And when I looked at them, you know, they were so cute. I decided if I can't kill something myself, I'm not going to.
Wait, the B-52s? I thought I recognised the guy a moment ago. They were the ones who sung Love Shack, maybe? Because that's where I thought I recognized him from.
Eat meat anymore.
The Love Shack is a little old place where...
In human terms, you'd have trouble expressing the fact that you want to get the hell out of there. You do exactly what they do. Try to jump over the fence, try to get away from the man who's clubbing you. Being vegan is the only way to go if you are an ethical vegetarian.
Here she is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Spice, who is not only a professional wrestler and a bodybuilder, but also an actress. Yeah, Spice?
Hi, this is Casey Kasem in Los Angeles, a vegetarian for over 20 years, a vegan for over half a dozen years. Become a vegetarian and your body will respect you.
Casey, become a vegan, bro, not become a vegetarian. But in any case, I didn't know that Casey Kasem was or is a vegan.
For your wisdom, the animals will love you for your compassion.
Hi, I'm Moby. I've been a vegan for about 6 years.
Retro Moby footage. There he is. There he is, guys. This is Moby in 1994 on this piece of film. This is an absolute gem of a find.
The reason I became a vegan is because I love animals, and basically I think it's wrong for human beings to impose their will.
How old must
violently
Moby
on other
be here?
creatures.
Ooh, fast forward. Right, yeah, that's that then, guys. So what are we gonna check out next? Hope you're enjoying the stream so far. Okay, we got another piece of mid-90s footage now. We've got this one's a news report about Vegan Day at UC Berkeley in I think that's in California, right? Let's check that out. This is a news report on Vegan Day on campus.
Is extended through 1999.
Here's a name for you. They're called the Vegans. And tonight they're on the loose in the Bay Area. Their mission to convert you and to influence what you eat.
Good heavens.
Not as ominous as it sounds, but as Cheryl Hurd reports, it is a little weird.
Very weird.
We're out here on the UC Berkeley campus on this fine Friday afternoon, giving away free vegan items such as...
This guy's name is definitely Chad. This is like the stereotypical early mid-90s American college kid. Hey dude, my name's Chad. I'm gonna show you some awesome vegan eats right now, man. Hey, come back to my apartment. I'll show you a cool guitar riff, and then we'll eat some good vegan food, man.
Amazaki shakes.
Amazaki shakes? Doesn't sound appetizing.
Oh, 90s.
But these people are not like most of us. They're vegans. It's not unusual to see people used as guinea pigs on the UC Berkeley campus. Here, anything goes.
Want free vegan snack?
Well, almost anything. Veganism may be a tough sell here.
Anybody's a vegan. People that are athletes are vegan. People that are maybe from 5-year-old to 80-year-old.
Vegans don't use animal products and byproducts such as eggs, dairy products, or even honey in their food. If you're a vegan radical, you don't wear leather, fur, silk, wool, or use soaps made from animal products.
Right here what we have some amazaki, which is made from rice.
Rice? Oh, brother.
Oh, brother, rice milk.
This is pretty good.
And this is...
I've never heard of Amazaki or Amazaki shakes, but I assume it's just rice milk with some flavoring. I don't know why the carnists are so up in arms about that. So many of them drink plant-based milks now. It just shows how hesitant people were for change back then.
Noble foods. And
oh my god, look at the graphics. Look at the graphic design on this fib rib. I've never eaten one of these. So I don't know what they're like, but I guess they're like a very bad version of the vegan beef jerky we've got now. Maybe some people in the comments can tell me.
No lips, no snouts, no butts about it. Fib ribs are the best.
Sort of a barbecue beef jerky without the beef.
So what do you think about that vegan sorbet? It's very tasty.
Yeah. Here you go.
Oh, I want to see this. I want to... You don't like it?
Nah, it's not that good. Too used to ice cream.
Not that good.
For some, vegan food is like broccoli. Either you like it or you don't. In Berkeley, Cheryl Hurd, Channel 5, Eyewitness News.
No honey.
No eggs.
No eggs, no honey.
Somebody said no good.
Anyway, there's a lot more news ahead tonight, including Calvin Klein.
Right, yeah, that's that for that one. What have we got lined up next then, guys? All right, we've got next a news special on the ALF. This is from 2000. We're going into the noughties now, guys. We're going into the noughties. Let's take a look. All right.
In the meantime, a totally separate group has claimed responsibility for Sunday's Neiman Marcus attack.
It's a group that's on the radical fringe of the animal rights movement. They're hailed by heroes as heroes by some, and they're regarded as terrorists by others.
Thanks, Louis.
ABC 7 News I-Team reporter Dan Noyes has been following their tracks, and he's here to tell us more about the group.
Well, Jessica and Dan, the Bay Area is known for groups that hold protests and news conference on a number of issues, including animal rights. But there is one group that does its work in the dead of night with crowbars, fire bombs, and video cameras. And they've given us some of their secret tapes.
Want to avoid copyright for the music.
Dela Cruz has had the ALF on his mind for more than a year now. Someone has been leaving threatening notes and putting locks on the gates at his chicken processing plant, Fulton Valley Farms near Santa Rosa. And it's gotten worse.
They had a bomb placed in this area here. They draped this with flammable liquid, paper saturated in flammable liquid, which would ignite here and start the fire through here and burn the office.
Just before this past...
Yeah, so I've got some more footage lined up of some retro kind of radical stuff about the militant, you know, like the firebombing campaigns and letter bombs and stuff like that. Can anyone in the comments answer me who lived as an animal rights activist throughout, you know, the 90s, the early noughties? Why were animal rights campaigns back then so much more militant, violent, radical than they are now? Yet there's more vegans now. There's more animal rights activists now. Vegans were a much more obscure group back in those days. Therefore, why do we not see vegan terror attacks now? Why do we not see these letter bombs being sent into vivisection labs, these car bombs like there was in the early 90s in Bristol, where I live these days? There was a car bomb by an animal rights group. Can someone in the comments answer why that is, that we're less militant than ever now, despite the huge numbers? Surely among us, the more of us than there's ever been, there are people who would do these actions, but that none of these. I'm not encouraging anything, by the way. I just want to cover my ass legally while I do the stream. I'm not encouraging anything. I'm genuinely wondering why. Why is that? But yeah.
Christmas, someone planted fire bombs throughout the building. They didn't go off. Still, the incident shook some of the workers to the core.
As the employees arrived at the plant and they found out about having bombs in here, they were physically shaken. Some of them were crying. Some of them refused to come back into the operation.
You know, if people want to relate to fear and intimidation, they only have to look into the eyes of these animals they don't know why they're being killed.
Rod Coronado is perhaps the most well-known member of the Animal Liberation Front.
Did I hear something about this guy recently? Rod Coronado. Did I hear on the grapevine that he's now an ex-vegan or something? I hope I haven't slipped up there during the stream and I've got the wrong person. But I'm pretty sure I heard recently, if it wasn't him, it was someone whose name sounds like him, who was one of the ALF like OGs. Apparently he's, I don't know if it's him, so I won't say more. I'm not saying for certain it was him. Maybe people in the comments can confirm.
He claims to have rescued thousands of animals from fur farms and laboratories, and he
Louis
served 4 years in prison for setting a fire at this Michigan State University research center. He says the type of device planted at Fulton Valley Farms sounds familiar.
The one that you refer to maybe is similar to the...
Why is this dude now an ex-vegan? How is this happening? Was this guy just a narcissist? This is like... Where's an Amy Omar, I guess, who I did the documentary on recently? Two radical animal rights activists doing all these farm infiltrations and everything. Where's even had a documentary made about him. They're both now ex-vegan. How is this happening? I think it's narcissism, right? These people are attracted to such movements because Well, look, this guy got his place on the news, didn't he? He's on the news. He's got the limelight. Now he's just not famous anymore, so he's screwed over the animals. I don't know.
Ones that I was convicted of using, and probably has a reputation in the movement as being an effective technique.
In fact, law enforcement sources tell us they found plans for an incendiary device on the ALF website that is very similar to the ones that failed to go off at the Fulton plant. Fires did cause damage at 2 Petaluma processors in January. A big rig burned on an egg farm, and offices and storage buildings at this veal plant suffered $250,000 damage. You can still see smoke on the walls.
The evidence left behind at each of these scenes is very similar. There are strong indications to us that the same people were responsible for all these acts.
Hey, whoa, this is what the chamber has got to go.
The owners of these plants are used to being the target of protesters who sometimes get quite creative. These people handcuffed their hands together inside heavy barrels of concrete and blocked the front gate at Rancho Veal. But arson is another matter, and farmers and processors throughout Sonoma County are feeling the heat.
They're angry that people are actually threatening them and their employees and their businesses, and they know it could happen to them too.
So now they are offering a $52,000 reward for the arrest of those responsible for the arson attacks.
These are cowardly acts, and who's ever out there has to understand that we're not going to sit by and let these occur without a response.
But finding those responsible may prove difficult. The ALF set a fire that caused $5 million damage at the UC Davis Animal Diagnostics Lab back in 1987. All these years have passed and no one has been arrested. That worries the more recent victims of arson attacks.
You know, they call it arson. Well, I feel it's not arson, it's terrorism, because they're trying to scare us into not processing, not doing something that they don't want us to do.
Should they be looking over their shoulders?
Damn right they should be looking over their shoulders. As long as anybody is making a profit from the exploitation and misery of animals, human, or the earth, yes, they better be watching over their backs.
But Rob,
that sounds a lot like the quote that Screaming Wolf says in The Mysterious Author of the Book, A Declaration of War from 1992, which is like, I did a video on it called, Is This the Most Sinister Book in AR History or something like that. But yeah, people should look into that book if they want a mysterious little trip back to the early 90s and into militant animal rights terrorism, I guess you could call it.
Rob Coronado says people have nothing to fear from the ALF, that its members respect all life, animal and human. He says no one has ever been hurt in an ALF raid.
And every time I hear the label that the ALF is violent, I think of the blood on people's hands. And I know that the ALF does not have a drop of it on its own.
Rob Coronado says he no longer carries out attacks on behalf of the ALF. But tonight at 11, we'll take you on a secret rendezvous with a man who says he does.
Well, I want people to know I'm not a violent person. I'm not a terrorist. I'm not a hateful person. That I act out of love. I act out of love for the animals.
And you'll be surprised to see what type of people are behind the masks and how the ALF is organized in its attacks to try and protect animals. That's tonight on ABC 7 News at 11 o'clock. Dan, Jessica.
Powerful stuff. We look forward to more. Thanks. Thank you, Dan.
Well,
Ground Animal Rights Group is claiming responsibility for that attack.
we spoke with an active member of the Animal Liberation Front who says he goes on these raids all the time. Dan Noyes joins us with a special I-Team investigation.
Now, Jessica and Dan, we sent word out to the underground world of the ALF that we were pursuing a story. And then one day last week, a messenger from the group showed up here at ABC 7 and took us to a secret rendezvous with an active ALF volunteer. And we agreed to re-record this interview and use someone else's voice to prevent authorities from identifying the man.
The people I associate with have no idea what I do. My nighttime activities. I'm just a normal person like everyone else.
He won't tell us his name or where he lives, but this man says he's a member of an Animal Liberation Front cell in another part of the country. He provides important insight into the group that may be behind several recent attacks in the Bay Area.
I really just don't think the public has any clue about what kind of animal abuse is out there. I think if people could go behind those locked doors like I've done, look into the animals' eyes and see the incredible amount of suffering, I challenge anybody to see what I've seen and not do what I'm doing.
Just 3 days ago, a group claiming to be the ALF hit the Neiman Marcus in San Francisco. The store sells fur coats. They smashed dozens of windows and caused $100,000 damage. Arson was the tool for 3 other attacks in Sonoma County in recent weeks. $250,000 of damage to this slaughterhouse, a burned-out big rig at this egg farm. But the firebombs placed throughout this chicken processing plant did not ignite.
You know, they call it arson. Well, I feel it's not arson.
Does a cow hurt when it's slaughtered? I think that's the terrorism. I think the people who abuse animals for money, for greed, those are the terrorists. And I consider my job to stop terrorism, to stop violence.
The FBI is working hard to stop the ALF.
Britches,
and authorities in Sonoma County are offering a $52,000 reward for arrests in the 3 arson attacks.
These are cowardly acts. And who's ever out there has to understand that we're not going to sit by and let these occur without a response.
Yeah, cowardly acts, says the guy picking on defenseless animals. You can't fight back.
What's cowardly? I think cowardly is torturing an innocent animal who can't defend itself, who has no ability, no voice in this world, and who is completely powerless. I think that's cowardly.
Authorities in Sonoma and San Francisco have a very difficult case on their hands. The ALF has been operating for 20 years with very few arrests. Take this fire, for example. The ALF torched the UC Davis Animal Diagnostics Lab, causing $5 million of damage.
Okay, I want to make this clear, guys. Arson is not vegan. There's no such thing as an empty building, is a saying. If you torch, I understand the importance of financial damage in animal rights stuff. You don't know what kind of animals are in that building that you're torching. You don't know if there's rats, mice in there. You're going to kill the bugs and stuff like spiders. There could be, you know, frogs and stuff below. It's probably not a good idea. If you wouldn't set fire to a forest, it's probably not a good idea to set fire to a building that also has animals in it, potentially lots of little mice and rats and stuff running around that are going to burn alive.
That was back in 1987. All these years have passed with no arrest.
The authorities are never going to stop.
And by the way, I understand the intentions behind these things. I just don't think that activists have thought this through. It's not something I had ever thought through until someone had brought it to my attention a few years ago, and it's something that people need to consider when carrying out radical actions. You don't want to end up burning animals alive after you've liberated some animals.
As long as there's animal abuse, there's going to be people out there who aren't willing to tolerate it, who won't stand idly by while animals are tortured or murdered.
Now, this ALF member and others I've spoken to know it's impossible for them to stop the use of animals for food, clothing, or research. It's too much a part of our everyday lives. But they say their short-term goal is to get all of us to just stop for a moment and think about the issues. Dan, Jessica.
Right, what have we got next on the retro clip menu then, guys? We've got some footage here about Barry Horne, who died on hunger strike in 1998. So let's get this on. This is a UK news clip now about a bit of an animal rights legend, Barry Horne, who committed some radical actions here in the UK and ended up dying on hunger strike over the Labour government's broken promises on vivisection, on animal testing. So let's take a look at this.
He's now seriously ill, almost 9 weeks into his hunger strike. He wants a royal commission into experiments on animals, but the government says it won't be blackmailed. Colin Baker reports.
Barry Horne supporters say he's close to slipping into a coma. He's close to the point of no return. He has already starved himself longer than most of the IRA hunger strikers, and like them, his demands seem unlikely to be met. Horne was strong enough a few days ago to rise from bed and wave to his supporters holding vigil outside the hospital. 4 years ago...
You're watching now what must be some of the only footage ever of Barry Horne that you'll ever see. So this is important. This was probably in the week maybe that he even died. So, yeah, very important footage in our movement's history.
Though he was convicted on arson and explosives charges, one of his targets was Boots the chemist on the Isle of Wight. His supporters say he won't give up until a Royal Commission on Animal Experiments is established.
His hearing's gone and his skin colour is beginning to change slightly, which I think is the effect of the liver.
Some research scientists have been threatened with retaliation by animal rights militants if Horne dies.
I think this is an extremely dangerous thing to do, and it's quite clear from the way things have been going that if he does take his life this way, we're going to see some quite possibly dangerous militancy from the extremists in the Animal Liberation Front.
Successive British governments have made it clear.
Dave says, Carnism debunked. Do you remember the animal rights grave robbing incident? I do know of it. I have heard about this. This was from a militant branch of the Animal Liberation Front in the 90s. They dug up someone's grave, but I can't remember why. But yeah, let me carry on with this clip. But feel free to fill us in, Dave.
Over the years, they will not submit to terrorism and blackmail. So this evening, it would seem that Barry Horne's fate is very much in his own hands. Colin Baker, ITN, York.
In just over an hour from now, ITV will launch its
Government Committee of Inquiry, and yet there has already been a Government Committee of Inquiry sitting. It's a permanent committee. It's been in existence for 12 years doing exactly this. I kind of wonder whether he's got the right end of the stick here.
If there were a ban, how would it affect your work?
Well, you only have to look back over medical progress over the last 50 years to see that the vast majority of the major medical breakthroughs, antibiotics, anesthetics, vaccines, organ transplantation, have all crucially depended at some point in the discovery process on animal studies. If you then run that forward 50 years, you'd have to say we could expect major medical breakthroughs not to happen if we were not able to do the animal studies.
But public opinion does seem to be going against you. Animal experimentation is being increasingly questioned. We've seen it removed for testing of cosmetics. Could there come a time when in major medical incidents there is no need to test on animals?
Well, I certainly don't think public opinion is running against the use of animals in medical research. In fact, most of what I've seen and heard talking to people and read in the press is very clear.
Fast forward some more.
62nd day of his hunger strike. To his supporters who've maintained a constant vigil, he's a martyr. To those who suffered from his 2-year firebombing campaign, he's little more than a terrorist. For weeks, there have been reports that he's been...
Damn, so this was a tense time in the UK. I don't remember it because I was 9 years old and I just had no interest in veganism or animal rights at the time. I was just brought up in a standard meat-eating family like most of us, and it just wasn't what I was watching on the news or cared about. But here is basically, it's a hunger strike and he's holding the Labour government to ransom with one of our activists' life. You change this or this guy is going to die. He will starve himself to death if you do not change this policy on animal testing. So this must have been a tense time in the UK. And, you know, it's a shame I don't remember it and can't give much more commentary on it. But, yeah, I'll carry on with the clip.
Close to death, followed by admissions that he's taken some sugared liquids. But campaigners are adamant only government agreement for a royal commission on vivisection will get him eating again.
This distraction by the media to say that people...
I want to know if I have met any of the people that I'll see in these clips, like from the 90s. I mean, I imagine all these people are still going to be activists now. I wonder if I've met, for example, Alison Lawson here at a demo or something, who will obviously be much older now. But I wonder if I've met like these people that you're seeing in these clips and stuff in the UK scene, because we've got a good tight scene here because we're quite a small country. And you're guaranteed to bump into these people at demos, really.
People can bring him off the hunger strike. It is exactly that, a distraction. There's Labour can save him, and that's all. All they have to do is implement their Royal Commission, which was promised before the election, and they can save him.
Barry Horne caused millions of pounds of damage in arson attacks on the Isle of Wight. He was jailed for 18 years after detectives caught him planting bombs in shops in Bristol. Police are expecting more violence if he dies, and death threats have been made against 10 people involved with animal experimentation. But although Labour supported a royal commission before coming to power, the government and the industry say policy cannot be dictated by blackmail.
I can't see a case for a royal commission because the government actually already has a committee which is looking at this issue of animal experimentation and has been for the last 12 years and has year on year produced recommendations and changes which have benefited animal welfare in laboratories. A royal commission, by comparison, would not be able to produce any report for another 2 or 3 years.
These pictures of Barry Horne were secretly filmed by his friends last week. He's apparently lost his eyesight and hearing, and his internal organs have started to fail. It's possible he'll now be moved to a more secure hospital, as authorities here are unhappy with some of the protests sparked by his hunger strike.
Jeez, the level Barry was willing to go for the animals, that's mad. He went blind and his organs started failing because the government wouldn't change something, and he just said, I'm not bluffing, you're going to kill me if you don't change, and it happened.
Jane O'Brien, BBC News.
Lawyers for 8 lung cancer victims
serving an 18-year sentence for firebombing. His supporters say it's only a matter of time before his condition deteriorates beyond control. Last week, he stopped drinking the sweet tea and fruit juice that sustained him during a break in his protest. Now that Barry Horne is back on iced water, a coma, then death seem inevitable. To his supporters outside York District Hospital, Labour's failure to carry out a pre-election promise of a royal commission on animal experiments is central to the protest. On the other side, the government is determined not to give in to threats. Horne has been criticised by some animal welfare groups for using emotional blackmail, which would prove counterproductive. He was transferred to hospital from Full Sutton Prison in York after his condition deteriorated. He was serving an 18-year prison sentence for his part in a firebombing campaign on the Isle of Wight and for trying to plant incendiaries in stores in Bristol. In the last decade, the animal rights movement has become increasingly violent.
Again, the animal rights movement has become increasingly violent. And again, well, why has this dissipated now? Why aren't there such attacks these days? Why hasn't there been one since I've been vegan, as far as I know? There have been on like little, those hunting towers and stuff you see getting burned down, and there's been butcher shop windows smashed and all that kind of stuff. But as far as actual like bombing campaigns and this kind of stuff, like they've just disappeared.
Horne is a member of the ALF, which has claimed responsibility for dozens of attacks in its campaign against cruelty to animals. 10 people, mainly medical researchers, have been threatened with death if Horne dies. As he weakens, the biggest fear of those 10 is that his martyrdom may validate his cause. Well, the Home Office Minister, George Howarth, is in Westminster now. Minister, first of all, on this matter of whether the government ever had any interest at all in bringing forward an animal live experiments bill, it wasn't in the manifesto, but it was in literature before the manifesto.
No, there was a suggestion that we would have a royal commission, and that's still an option. It's still something that we're considering. But in the meantime, what we've been doing is carrying out an agenda. For example, we've banned all cosmetic testing. There are no more tests going on with tobacco or alcohol products, and we're getting on with that agenda. But I mean, in the meantime, I think it is important that those who care about animals recognise that there is an agenda we are working to, and we still haven't ruled out.
I didn't know animal testing for cigarettes was banned in the UK in the 90s. In that case, why do vegans now in the UK say, oh, you shouldn't smoke this brand, you shouldn't smoke this brand, you shouldn't smoke this brand, if it's all been banned, unless they brought it back?
The prospect of a royal commission.
Have you had any direct...
Right, I have no idea what a royal commission is. I know I'm British and I'm meant to know what this is, but yeah, it's something to do with looking into stopping animal testing with regards to this context, but I don't know exactly what it means.
Contact with Mr. Horne, any attempt perhaps to dissuade him from dying?
Well, no, but there has been contact between his supporters and the officials in the Home Office who deal with these issues. And there's certainly been some discussion on that, but I wouldn't want to leave anybody with the impression that we're in some sort of negotiating situation.
Dave.
We're not. It would be totally
I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
in these sorts of circumstances to negotiate government policy alongside any action that anyone...
All right, I think this guy is just going to talk to the end of the clip now. So let's move on to the next clip. What have we got loaded up next? Okay, this is more on Barry Horne, but I actually think because we've seen the stuff about Barry now, what I'm going to do is skip to Robin Webb's debate here on Newsnight. So Robin Webb was a key figure for the Animal Liberation Press Office here in the UK. I think he's still alive, but he must be very old now. So let's see this guy throw it down on BBC Newsnight. This is with regards to Barry Horne's death and the testing. Oh, hold on. We got Professor Hawking on here. What's he going to say? All right, let's check this clip out.
It's likely that the extreme end in the ALF will get more militant. And we are warning anyone who's been a target of the Animal Liberation Front in recent years to be particularly vigilant about their security if this happens.
Because you expect further attacks?
It's difficult to know precisely what to predict, but I think we will see a situation, if Barry Horne takes his own life in this way, where the ALF want to seek some sort of vengeance.
The whole issue of animal testing has been brought in from the fringes in the past few years, and pressure on the government to act on animal welfare is much greater. Nevertheless, the vast majority of tests on animals are still for medical reasons, and that, according to one of the world's leading scientists, means they remain vital.
I object strongly to extremists blackmailing us like this. If the government gives way and establishes a royal commission, what else will it give way to? Every extremist in the country will go on hunger strike for his or her cause.
No, Navia Hawking was definitely not vegan here. So you're actually hearing him here justifying animal testing. So that was obviously one shame about him. Now, Hawking, towards the end of his life, he did sign a declaration on animal sentience, saying that animal life must be respected and that animals are sentient beings who are deserving of moral consideration. He did sign a declaration later in his life. However, I don't know if he ever... He's not an idiot. He's wrong morally on this issue, but he's one of the world's cleverest people that ever existed. So he's certainly no idiot. He had an IQ of... So he had some bonkers high IQ. But yes, unfortunately, he was pro-vivisection. He was... I guess he considered it part of science and part of what helped him so much as someone who suffers from locked-in syndrome and who could only move one muscle in his body. I guess he was so emotionally invested in it probably for that reason.
One has to stand up to extremists like the Animal Rights Front, even though many people are afraid to do so. I expect I will receive a load of hate mail tomorrow.
Tonight, though, at another vigil outside the House of Commons, the powerful allure of Barry Horne's potential martyrdom is winning over a new generation.
I do envy for what he's doing.
You envy him?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could do the same, but like, I'm a bit young and can't really do it.
Who is that little kid with the Cockney accent? I wonder where he is now. He must be in his early 30s now. So he must be my age. Is he part of our movement? I wonder if anyone knows him.
It's a dilemma for the Labour government. They don't want to give in to blackmail, but can they watch someone die? For a royal commission, they said they'd deliver.
That report by Jackie Long. Well, first of all, George Howard, will you let Barry Horne die?
Well, the question isn't whether we let him die or not. The question is whether he chooses to go on with the hunger strike, and I hope he will decide to come off it.
But the point is, though, that in here is a statement by the government, while in opposition, while looking for people's votes, that you would support a royal commission. And there's no royal commission.
Well, we haven't ruled the option of a royal commission out. What we've said repeatedly is that we are working to an agenda in the meantime, given the resources that are available to us, to eliminate as far as possible. For example, in cosmetic testing, we've already achieved that. In tobacco and alcohol, we've already achieved that. The effort has to go into reducing the number of experiments.
So just for anyone who doesn't know what a Home Secretary is, this if you're not from the UK, this is one of the highest positions in UK government. So this is one of the big dons in the UK government, George Howarth speaking back in 1998. And I think this Robin Webb, who's an older gentleman from the radical animal rights movement, is going to challenge him on these views.
Rather than to the gesture at the moment of a Royal Commission.
Well, sorry, if it is a gesture now, then you didn't call it a gesture before the election. What is the problem with establishing a Royal Commission, which is not you saying we're going to end animal testing? It's a commission to look at it, and that is what Barry Horne wants.
Well, I've said that we will not rule that out. But the issue at the moment is we cannot respond to the pressure of somebody who's on a hunger strike, or for that matter, any act of terrorism. Because if we respond to that, then all policy making in the future could be dictated to by that kind of action. No government can submit to blackmail, and we certainly won't.
Rob, basically, in the end of the day, then, you will have to let him die.
Well, it's not our choice. He has the option, and I hope those who support him will join us in urging him to come off the hunger strike, and then we can all start to make some progress.
This is the good thing about Newsnight on BBC. The presenters always they remain pretty neutral, and they always press whoever it is on their position. So Kirsty Walker, I think, is the presenter here. She's putting him right in the hot seat now and saying, so you're going to let him die, which is significant, right?
Progress on an issue that there is a lot of areas of work that we can work together on.
Robin Webb from the ALF, this will give you another martyr. I mean, you could be quite cynical about this. This kind of adds to your cause, doesn't it, if he dies?
No, we're not going to have a martyr. We're going to have yet another casualty. And Mr. Howarth is quite wrong to say that tests on cosmetics and alcohol and tobacco have been banned. It hasn't been banned by the government. They've been voluntary.
Well, let's just stick. Let's just stick to this.
Mr. Howarth made this point, and they've been voluntarily ended by the industry themselves. And I would, if I may also say, it was most unfair at the beginning of the program. We saw 2 cars car bombed, and that was not the Animal Liberation Front. It was never claimed as such, and the only person ever convicted of placing an animal rights car bomb was a huntsman who said he did it to discredit the animal rights
Let's just be quite clear. There is an extreme wing of the ALF, isn't there, called the Justice Department, who carries out acts of sabotage and terrorist acts in the name of animal liberation.
No, the terrorists are the people torturing animals behind the closed, locked doors of laboratories. Okay. If they have nothing to hide, why did the Animal Scientific Procedures Act make it an offence to reveal what goes on in laboratories?
If Barry Horne dies, do you abhor what Jill Phipps' mother said, that the police won't know what's hit them? Would you actively say now that if Barry Horne dies, you hope there is not another act of terrorism of any sort by animal liberationists?
If Barry Horne dies, I hope there's not another act of terrorism against all the innocent creatures, human and non-human, in this world. It is not blackmail. It is merely asking the government to honour a pre-election pledge. It could equally be said that a letter saying, unless you introduce a Royal Commission, I won't vote for Labour in the next election, that could be called blackmail. I find that an offensive attitude from Mr. Howard.
Andrew Blake, I'd like to bring you...
I love how this Robin Webb does not match the stereotypical look of a vegan at all. He's like this older, traditional looking British man in like a suit and tie and white hair and glasses, and here he is like laying the smackdown on animal rights on Newsnight.
You are part of the group that Stephen Hawkins is involved in, and you have a disease of the central nervous system. Why is animal research crucial to you?
Mine's a genetic disorder, and they identified the gene that causes it. In 1996, they isolated it. They put that into mice. They are already making great strides in finding out what goes wrong in the living body. Now, people like Robin Webb will say, well, why don't you use people like me? Okay, fair enough. I'll tell you why. Because a lot of research, you have to put the animal down afterwards and do a post-mortem operation.
Well, I don't think he would argue to use you. Maybe he would argue to use the worst criminals in the country or something. I don't know. The people who have been convicted of serious, horrific, brutal murders and are just beyond reproach. Maybe we should just test on them.
To find out what has gone wrong on a molecular level. Now, not many patients would be willing to put forward themselves. If there certainly would be no medical research who would terminate the life of a patient.
Now, Robin Webb, can you equate Andrew Blake's life and his life expectancy with the life of a mouse?
Well, I can't understand.
Can you? And that's a straightforward question. Sorry.
Let me answer this question then, please. I take Andrew Blake's point that I would ask for people like him to be used. My own sister was a spastic who never walked. I've worked both voluntarily and professionally for the physically. Allow me to finish, please. For the physically disadvantaged.
So
animals are not more important than humans. Individuals are.
So Robin Webb is now trying to say, no, we would not test on disabled people. My own sister was disabled. He used an offensive word for that we no longer use in the UK, but must have been mainstream in the 90s. But he's saying, no, hell no, we don't want to test on disabled people. He's just saying we stop testing, non-consensual testing on people at all.
Important.
And animals.
Patients go in for a post-mortem. Excuse me, but we're not a Nazi government here.
And what I am saying, I certainly am not saying use you as a model any more than I would have said use my sister.
That's exactly what I am saying.
What I am saying is that, for example, the pharmaceutical company Siebes Geigy, in its own report, showed that 95% of drugs which had been tested and found both safe and effective on.
Yeah, no, I didn't say disabled. It was offensive. He used the S word to describe disabled people. That is considered offensive, at least in the UK. I don't know what the deal is in other countries, but we don't use the S word anymore for disabled people.
On animals were dismissed as useless after clinical.
Let's just leave that particular point there and bring in Professor Martin now. You carry out animal experiments. If you knew that it was unacceptable to carry out experiments on animals, don't you think the medical world would make much greater strides in a synthetic form of experimentation?
Well, I myself try to do synthetic experimentation. I use alternatives to animal experiments. I use computer models, I use cells in test tubes in the laboratory. But at some point in the process of understanding human disease and therefore being able to prevent it, and I believe that's what the society of this country wants, I have to, regrettably, use an animal and experiment on it to understand the whole disease. Can I just comment on a philosophical problem that Robin Webb mentioned? I think in what he was saying, he was valuing animals equally with human beings. Now, I believe animals are valuable and I respect them, but I believe human beings are more valuable than animals. And I think 95% of all the people of this country will accept that human beings write poetry, they play music, they love each other in a constructive way, they plan for the future. And there is no evidence that animals do that. Therefore, I think it's quite legitimate, as man has used animals for food and for clothing over thousands of years, to use them for our good. What I can tell you is that I am very controlled, though, in the way I use them by the Home Office. And we have the best conditions for animal welfare in the world.
But would you support a Royal Commission?
If the government thought it were necessary, I would support it.
But do you not think it's necessary to review and revise?
I think that the Home Office has a very good system of reviewing and revising the legislation all the time. I don't, particularly as a doctor and scientist working with animal experimentation, think it is necessary. If the country thought it were necessary, then I would go along with it and take part in it.
Very briefly, Andrew.
Well, as a patient, we did a survey of Nobel Prize winners in medicine. that of the 39 said that animal research was essential, and not one of them said it wasn't. So whose side do we go for?
Well, let's just finally, I want to go straight to George House. No, George House, finally.
We have 3 on to 1 here.
Do you, well, I think you've actually quite a lot to say, and I would like to put the last point to the Minister.
Where are the disabled people who are against animal testing? Where are the medical people who are against animal testing? And this is why we want a royal commission to have it properly discussed.
Minister, do you believe there's a hierarchy like Professor Martin says? And
I think most sensible people would say that if the only way you can develop, for example, a new medicine or a new procedure, it would have to use animals, then it has to be justified, yes. And in that sense, we've had some really good examples here today. If you can develop something that helps somebody who's already ill or prevents somebody from dying using animals, that has to be justified. But what also has to be justified through the ethical review process is that there isn't a viable alternative available.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much indeed. The Sun sounds the Murdoch alert. The euro will rain down.
All right. End of that clip. All right, I've got 2 more clips to go through. Let's go to Jill Phipps now. So you heard her mentioned in that clip, and you also heard me mention her in the Benjamin Zephaniah clip, because that Benjamin Zephaniah video was filmed the year before I think she died. So now let's go back in time to the news report on the death of Jill Phipps, who died so valiantly trying to block a truck full of veal calves headed for the Netherlands from the UK. RIP Jill Phipps.
Angry and bewildered, stood at the gates of Coventry Airport.
We are desolate at the loss of Jill, absolutely desolate.
Though for some, the death of a colleague has not deflected their main purpose, to save animals from export. Others are not so certain that the sacrifice was worth it. According to the police, the victim was with other demonstrators trying to get in front of a truck carrying calves.
Sadly, 2 ran to the front of it, and this is the bit that's a little bit unclear. 2 ran to the front of it, and 1 slipped under the front wheel.
The dead woman, Jill Phipps, seen here in the green hooded jacket, was a regular demonstrator. ITN filmed her last week trying to stop the veal trucks, very much in the way she's reported to have done today.
Damn, I don't think I'd seen that footage there of Tinkerbell, be quiet. Sorry, she keeps barking. 1 sec. Tinkerbell, calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Other people live in these flats, baby. Calm down. Sorry, guys. Shush! Right, I'll mute her.
It happened just there. She was a lovely girl. She was smashing. She just came. She hasn't been here all day.
The police have maintained a strong presence here since flights resumed, though protesters have claimed that their rights have not been thoroughly considered. Since the veal flights resumed here at Coventry Airport, demonstrators have expressed their determination to stop them. Unfortunately, that determination has resulted in the death of 1 person.
So it wasn't even that. I don't think that the truck was going to carry them via like via go onto a ferry or go onto one of those underground underwater trains between the channel or anything. I think these calves were being transported by lorry, and then they were going to be packed onto a plane or something to the Netherlands. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Protester. And a short while ago, the calves Jill Phipps lost her life trying to turn back were flown out, though Phoenix Aviation say they're suspending more flights for now. Eric McInnes, News at 10, Coventry Airport.
The Royal Air Force is sending 9 murders and torture done by government hit squads in the...
All right, I think that's it for the news on Jill Phipps in this clip. But yeah, very sad that she died in such a horrible way. And there's people active in the animal rights scene now who knew her. She was a prominent activist in the mid-90s in the UK. I have no doubt that now, in this age of social media that we have, that if she was alive now, she would be well known in the animal rights movement. Right, last clip I've got coming up now, guys. It's been a good stream so far. This is from 1994. This is just a short one. This is on the militant wing of the Animal Liberation Front called the Justice Department, who have carried out very radical actions. So let's take a look at this clip now. This is from 1994, and it is a news clip on the so-called Justice Department.
Terrorism. Campaigners have been using increasingly violent tactics in recent weeks. 4 people have been injured by letter bombs and explosives. Shireen Wheeler reports.
In the name of compassion for animals, animal rights extremists have targeted hundreds of buildings and individual scientists, causing injuries and millions of pounds worth of damage. But the last few months have seen an alarming increase in violence and the number of attacks. At Oxford University, Professor Blakemore has used animals to study the causes of brain disorder. In the past, he's received numerous threats, but the week before Christmas, he was sent a letter bomb designed to kill, packed with 6 hypodermic needles. But his 19-year-old daughter received the parcel, and the professor believes narrowly escaped death.
It never occurred to me for a moment that anyone would be so callous, so cruel, as to have a package like this delivered to a home where they would know that they would be putting other innocent people at risk. But it's clear that my daughter, who collected this package, could have been killed by it. And of course, I just feel so outraged by that possibility. Thank God it didn't happen.
Yeah, you know, it is sad that that these actions ever took place that could have involved loss of human life. Unfortunately, the key problem is that humans continue to be the ruthless destroyers of all beings. But yeah,
the thought of it is beyond belief.
Professor Blakemore isn't alone in his outrage. Mark Matfield, who represents medical researchers using animals, was also sent a letter bomb last month, along with 11.
This is a great channel, by the way, guys. Check it out. Archive of Animal Liberation Films on the Net. I think you can see that on your screen now. Check that channel out. Subscribe to it. Whoever the channel owner is has got loads of like clips from like the 90s, early noughties and stuff. Maybe the odd one from the 80s and stuff in there, I think, possibly. But yeah, check that channel out.
Others. With 32 attacks in the last 3 months, he and his colleagues are calling on the Home Secretary to change the law and recognise this as terrorism.
If these terrorist acts were done by the IRA, the whole force of anti-terrorist legislation of all the special police powers will be brought to bear against it. And the police have had great successes against the IRA. But against the animal rights extremists, after 12 years and 60 bombs, they have not been able to arrest any one person.
60 bombs? Holy shit, this was 1994. I cannot believe how different the animal rights movement was back then to what we have now. That is, well, speaks for itself.
But medical researchers fear there's worse to come. This video, given to news organisations by the Animal Liberation Front, shows what they claim is the kind of bomb being used in these latest attacks. A group calling itself the Justice Department says it carried out most of them, including one on an Oxfordshire farmer in October. The Animal Liberation Front, who deny their supporters are linked with the group, nevertheless refuse to condemn their tactics.
People have broken the law in dramatic ways in the pursuit of the emancipation of women and the abolition of slavery, and this is the ultimate liberation struggle.
This is a ridiculous analogy because you are putting people's lives at risk who are working towards saving people's lives through medicine.
No, they are not saving people's lives. Recently, we've seen Oprah withdrawn, Manaplex withdrawn. All these drugs have been widely tested on animals, claimed to be safe, and have harmed humans. Animal experiments, on the whole, are not relevant to humans.
But everything, vaccination, for instance, for disease, transplantation, surgery of all sorts, antibiotics, anesthetics, all of these things were developed through the use of animals.
Antibiotics? Well, it could be the bloody death of us all, what with antibiotic use in farming. So, yeah. And how that is massively being overused in that, and bacteria are going to pretty soon probably become resistant to all that stuff that we're giving them. So yeah, the next, would it be pandemic? My virology knowledge is pretty bad, but yeah, something could be on the horizon due to antibiotic resistance.
But as these medical
shot gets the bonus point, and of course.
And that's the end of that clip. So, guys, I think we will call it quits there for the stream. I hope you've enjoyed taking a trip down memory lane there, or for those of you who weren't alive at the time, just a trip back in time. So I hope you enjoyed seeing all that retro vegan footage there, going right from the 70s to the 80s, the 90s, the early noughties, and back to the 90s. And hope you all have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Please remember to like the video on YouTube. Please do share the video if you liked it as well, if you enjoyed the stream. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a blessed day or night wherever you are.